We have the last standard tier 13.5 hull, the Worldeater, and today I want to go through the build on this one. It's going to get pretty wild, pretty complicated because of countermeasures and how they are incredibly messed up. I will be showing some videos that people have done of the ship in action when I talk about countermeasures, so be prepared for that one and you can see this ship live. This is going to be, like I said, pretty complicated, and I don't think Kixeye is going to fix anything wrong here because they're all out for 9 days for the holidays. Speaking of which, happy holidays. But let's go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. Taking a look at the Worldeater briefly, this is overall a pretty standard UAV hull. It has a CIC, which you can unlock at U1, as well as a heavy armor slot at U3, assuming a second one at X1, so no surprises to that one too much there. Pretty standard penetrative bonuses to begin with. There's a swarm time cap and a chaining range cap, or chaining range default on the hull. Nothing too crazy with that one, pretty high evade. It does have special abilities in terms of the regular ships are going to have a built-in missile launcher, which is not a launcher, it's a missile. It leaves an aura on impact that will debuff the penetrative armor, so it makes the enemy turrets weaker. It doesn't really do any damage, so it does 0 damage in fact. So this is just a skill thing that you can use. It's a triangle in front of the ship. If you haven't watched my VXP video, I did include it in that one. Don't need to worry about this too much. You can't really affect it by anything whatsoever, other than things you're already using. Now, this is an interesting ship because we are going to actually use this thing before we get the flagship. You have to use your 3 or 4 regular ships to earn the flagship, which is all kinds of crazy and is going to influence my build decision for this fleet. I'm going to build 4 damage ships and 1 countermeasure ship. I'm going to start out by building 2 damage ships, 1 countermeasure ship, and then another 2 damage ships. I likely am only going to get 3 normal ships done before the first raid, plus the flagship. I'm going to play a little more aggressively this time. I wouldn't recommend following that one, but for a few reasons, my flagship is not going to be an evade tank. It's not going to be a countermeasure ship or anything like that. Primarily because we can't use the flagship in Strike 1 because we don't have it yet, and secondarily because in Strike 3 you're likely going to be upgrading your flagship up to Cap or X1, etc. So you can't use it if it's upgrading, and that makes 2 out of the 6 events where you can't really use the thing because you don't have it yet and you're upgrading. So for that reason, I'm going to build my flag as a regular ship. Now I can say that we probably are expecting the armor points on the flag to be 200k and King Killer to be in the targets based on Kixeye strategy guide, although the strategy guide is, if I'm feeling generous, kind of lying to you. So I'll get into that when I talk about the countermeasures. In terms of the regular build, it's pretty standard for the weapons. You're going to use a mix of UAVs as well as countermeasures. But for my 4 damage ships, I'm going to build just the weapons on here to begin with, because you only need a set number of countermeasures in the target, and also you can benefit by putting extra building damage stuff on these damage ships rather than having a countermeasure for like 2 countermeasures on the damage ships. Okay, there's the weapons. In terms of the armors, I'm just going to go for 2 penetrative and 2 corrosive. Nothing too crazy there. Use the highest and or best ones that you have. So if I happen to have 2 rare, I'll put those on there. And if I get down to commons or epics or whatever, I'll use those. But 2 corrosive, 2 penetrative. I'm not going to try and pick which one is going to do more because I'd probably get it wrong. So there's the armor setup. Now comes the fun part, which is specials. On the regular ships, I'm going to use an engine, of course, and that's going to be the one that came out with the ship, which is the Soul Gorge engine, tier 13.5. I believe that says 800k survival, which is a kind of crazy amount, or maybe it just says 80k and I can't quite read. But no, looks like that is 80k survival on there. Decimal points would be cooler. Commas are important, people. Anyway, there's the engine. If you don't have this one, use whatever other older engine you have, as long as it is the same combat speed, which shouldn't be too much of a problem to get 5 engines of the same combat speed. The second special is one I actually have already on my ships, and that is going to be a UAV range special. The one you're going to want to use is the Buckeye UAV targeting. This has a 30 chaining range, which is whatever, because the hull already has 40, which is more, and it has penetrative range plus 30%, which is what you want. And of course, it also more than doubles your UAV damage, which is fantastic, so that's a great special to use overall. I'm also going to go through and start throwing on some of the new specials we got, like the Mindwire UAV Relay. This has a chain count of 3, increases projectile speed, penetrative reload, and UAV damage. You can find some older ones that do almost as well, matching these 3 stats. Of course, we also did get a regular non-limited special with the ship, and that is the UAV Revitalization Bay, kind of whatever on your names there, Kixeye. This has chaining range, penetrative damage, building damage, UAV damage, and wall damage for some reason. I didn't think UAV shot at walls, but whatever. What do I know? Anyway, this is basically a penetrative battery UAV specialization. It's one of the best ones. Go ahead and use that. We also can continue to increase our damage even more by putting on something like the limited wreath targeting console, which has projectile speed, penetrative reload, and penetrative damage, all of which are great for UAVs. Accuracy doesn't really matter so much because when you're shooting at buildings, of which this target is primarily buildings, you have 100% accuracy. At this point, for the last special, you have a choice. You can either put on something that will help increase damage by a ton, especially building damage by a ton, or you can put on something that is going to help with combat speed and damage by a little bit. So your choice is, do you want to use the liquid fire warheads, which is at the very bottom for me because I'm actually out of it, which will more than triple your building damage, and of course wall damage too, but there aren't really any walls in this target that your UAVs are shooting at. Anyway, you can use this guy, which will be tremendously helpful against buildings, which the target is mostly buildings. It's an assault target. I'm actually going to show you some videos of the ship in action in a second. Or you can use one that came out with, I believe it was the Sovereign, which, let me see if I can find it here. It might be a regular blueprint one. It is the Crown Thrusters. This has bonus combat speed 25%, which could be useful against scatterguns, as well as penetrative damage plus 55%, which is of course helpful for your UAVs. Ignore the countermeasure reload and evade. Might be kind of helpful, but let's talk about that in a second. So that's your choice. If you do the Crown Thrusters, you have to do something that has 25% combat speed on every single one of your ships, so just keep that in mind or they won't stack. I'm going to go for the liquid fire warheads because I think the potential for chaining UAVs is going to be absolutely crazy and absolutely massive. Regardless, there is my damage setup. I'm going to build personally 2 or 3 of these before the first strike and first raid, and then 1 countermeasure ship. Now, as we talk about the countermeasure ship, we actually really need to go through and watch and check out a few things in these targets. So I want to bring up the Kixeye official strategy guide, which was last updated 8 days ago, and talk about this very briefly while watching a few people, Billy as well as Luke. Thanks for the videos out there. I think they probably could have added a few things like the build of those ones and some commentary on it, so I'm going to do that here. And I want to show you what they do, what these ships do, in comparison to what the Kixeye strategy guide says things happen. So the first enemy type is the Trench Waker Scattergun, or Trench Walker probably. This thing you can outrange, so don't worry about that one. It's the short range turret. You outrange it totally fine. Now this video that Billy has here, he has a ship that's built out as a Gale tank, and Gales have a really interesting thing they do called shoot at, or at least they're supposed to. If I go into my shipyard, Gale shoot right here at mortars and UAVs. You can see that, that's what it says in game, mortars and UAVs. They are an anti-explosive damage type. The second countermeasure type in the game is an anti-penetrative damage type, which shoots at missiles and UAVs. And we also have the sprints, as well as things like cormorants and some other older stuff right there, like tridents. That is a damage type countermeasure. So there's 3 types of countermeasures. They're supposed to shoot at only the things that they say they shoot at, but Kixeye can quote-unquote cheat and take mortars and give them, say, 100% anti-explosive evade, which means that our Gales don't shoot at them whatsoever. But what you're about to see is even weirder than that, and it is actually going to be, believe it or not, an anti-mortar called the Gale shooting at missiles. So let's go ahead and check this out briefly here on Billy's video. So what you can see here is that we have a few turret types which are shooting out missiles, and the Gales are shooting down the missiles. This one right here, you have Gale shooting at missiles against this turret, which is completely bananas, and this is live in the game currently. And that turret we just took down is called the Tidehunter Missile Launcher. Damage type is penetrative, and it is allegedly vulnerable to only countermeasure type CMs, so sprints. However, Gales are shooting at this in-game, and I'm guessing the game designer developing this one just tested this and is kind of prioritizing sprints against this one, but didn't tag a missile as it can't be shot down by a Gale. Which doesn't make any sense, but that's what's happening in-game right now, and we're already building things, and people have already built, like Billy here, has already built his fleet based on what we see in the game right now. So if Kixeye were to change something now, or on December 30th when they got back from their vacation, they wouldn't be able, it would be too late, it would screw everyone over. If they change the build at this point, like I said, it screws everyone over, so I expect what is happening in the VXP targets live right now, in this video you're watching, to be the thing that is live in the strikes and the raids, which is all kinds of messed up, but that's the spot we're in. And of course, we have a few other things in this target, so let's go ahead and watch those if we can here. We have a few things that have arcs on them. I'm not going to worry about those too much because obviously arcs don't really matter. You can just avoid those. We have some ships that deal corrosive, so you can see how combat speed might be beneficial against those as he kind of drives off the screen here. We have more things with arcs. I'm going to ignore those in terms of a countermeasure perspective. These things can't be countermeasured, and it doesn't really matter. But we do have something right here. We have a UAV on the far left here, this UAV turret. And what you're going to see is that Gales are going to shoot at this UAV turret, and Billy is also doing a good job driving here and splitting out the ships so that they're not going to chain from ship 1 onto ship 2. But you can see he is using Gales that are not very effective at shooting that down. I think he could probably add a second ship or add higher projectile speed or something like that, which would make the Gales more effective at shooting down everything coming from that UAV turret. But you did see that Gales are working now on those UAV turrets, and there's a second one right here. It doesn't quite take all of them down, but you could, like I said, put on more Gales, increase projectile speed, and that would be better. We also have a ship right here, so let's go ahead and pause and go down and read the description on the ship. And I'll also show you the one on the turret as well. This Depthbringer UAV claims it is shot down by countermeasure CM types only. That's the word that's implied there. But as you can see, a damage type anti-explosive, aka Gale, is shooting at this right here. Okay, now let's take a look at the ship right here. If we scroll down to the Contagion, this is a UAV ship, and it is vulnerable to countermeasure type CMs. It says most vulnerable, but it is also vulnerable against anti-explosive, which you're about to see, because Billy's fleet right here, and he's going to stay stacked here, it's shooting at these UAVs and is going to take most of them out. Now, Gales work in a very interesting way in that they fire multiple shots at each incoming projectile until that projectile is completely taken out, whereas sprints and MDS-3s do not do that. So just be aware of that right here, and you could further increase the projectile speed and the number of weapons on here and stuff like that to make it more effective at these items here. As you can see, a few of them get through and are going to start chaining, but he's not moving things around because he has turrets off to the left there, so good job driving on that one. And of course, you'd actually have 4 or 5 ships and would take things out way more quickly. There's a regular Teeth Taker turret, Teeth Walker turret, whatever that was called. He's going to take that down pretty easily. A few turrets with arcs in there, and we've seen pretty much everything we're going to from this target. There are some other turrets like here that he's going to chain off the first one and grab the second one. That's pretty good driving, well done. And it's going to chain onto this one. This has a longer range, even though it's both claimed medium, but you can chain and take that one out, which he does a good job doing there, and is going to not do that quite as well against the next one. But there's all the interesting things we can take away from that target with two ships in there. Point is, Gales are working against things that they should not be working against. Now let's go ahead and check out Billy's his sprint fleet. So sprints are damage type countermeasure, and what you're going to see is that they're going to fire at things, but only fire at them once. So right here, you can see that this missile turret is shooting at him, and a lot of missiles get through, and he does take most of them out, but some of them are still getting through because sprints only shoot at something once rather than multiple times. So that's something interesting from the missile turret right there. And of course, against the regular ships, nothing's going to happen because they're just ships and you can't really countermeasure corrosive at this point. We also do have some more things with fire and arcs. I'm going to skip forward a little bit so you can see something. If you want to watch the whole video that he has, I'd recommend it. Go check it out. Here is a UAV turret, and what you're going to see is sprints are going to fire at this guy. They're very hard to see, but they're very quick white lines are going to fire at that one, and some of them are going to get across. It looks to me like they're getting, like, more UAVs are getting through against the sprints than the Gales, so just something for you to consider. And right here, sprints again are of course firing at the missile, but multiple things are still getting through, and you're still able to stop and chain through everything. We also do want to take a look, by the way, killing that tower beacon structure right there does take down the shrouded items in the target. We'll go through the strategy guide in a little bit more detail. Here's the same contagion, and you can see that sprints are firing at the UAVs as well, but some are still getting through because sprints only fire at these. I believe it's only once that they fire at those guys there. So that's what we can learn from that target, from just 2 ships right there. Partial build, nothing too crazy. Sprints are firing, but things are still getting through against the sprints right there. Billy did share his build on the Discord server, so if you want to go check out exactly what he's running, you can. I will say it's very similar to mine, and we have a very similar damage build, but my countermeasure setup is going to be totally different than his, or pretty different than his. Anyway, there's that target right there. The third video I want to watch is by Luke. Luke posted on Discord a fleet of Worldeater ships against the stuff in this target, and it was you know, a little different than this one, and he is using basically the same build Billy has. But I want you to watch what happens here with a full fleet, and this is going to be pretty fast speed, so I wish Luke would have, you know, slowed it down a little bit more and zoomed in so we could see some more details, but it's going to happen anyway. Okay, so Luke right here has a bunch of Gales. I think he has 2 countermeasure ships and then 2 damage ships. He does a really good job chaining and taking everything out really quickly. But what you can see if you pay close attention here is that the Gales are firing at the missiles, which is again super crazy, but whatever. And it's taking down all the missiles, which is totally great. So using 2 countermeasure holes is going to take everything down. I'm planning to just do 1 really good countermeasure ship, but if you use a second one, which I have the ability to refit to, you can do even better against those at that point. So just watching through here, he's continuing to click through the target, does a pretty good job driving. Could be, you know, some commentary and some zooming in on this would help, of course. Evades the MIRV from that targeting arc missile right there, so we'll look at the strategy guide for that one. And chains, again, you can do a really good job chaining in these targets like he has there to take down everything. And of course there's the turret you can outrange. He's going to chain onto the regular turret, but he can't quite outrange that one, so he has to run through and take some damage from it. The corrosive stuff right there is where using something like the combat speed for the crown thrusters could help against. Now there is the contagion right here. What you're going to see is that the Gales completely take down the contagion and all the damage from that one, which is fantastic. There's a UAV turret in the very center. Let's see if he gets close to this one. Good job zooming in there. He does, and he takes down all the UAVs and then continues off to the right side of the target. Gonna check out a few other things here. There's some ships, so you can just chain on those guys. No countermeasure or impact to those. Some other random stuff here. You can see that there is a missile. This is one of the missile that shoots several different stuff, and anyway, he takes that down pretty easily, chains onto the UAV. Great job on that driving. UAV right here, and a few things get through. He could have done a better job, and like Billy, split out 1 ship away from everything else, which would help avoid the damage. There's the contagion on the right side here. Both he and Billy are taking the same path where they get trapped right here. Probably better go to the outside, but you can see that he's shooting at the UAVs from the contagion perfectly fine, and is actually doing a pretty good job in this target. Is going to take out a few more things. Again, the Gales are shooting at everything, except for, of course, the corrosive, and is doing a really good job taking those down. So, of course, just take the ships down, and then here he takes some corrosive damage. He takes a little bit of damage on the fleet. This is a VXP target. We're not really worried about the damage. We're just trying to show the mechanics, and let's see if he shows the build here. Looks like he does show the build, so that's good. So taking a look at what he's got the same damage setup I'm going to for special, a second damage ship right there. This is a UAV fleet, the UAV ship. I disagree with the special choices on there, but I'll show you mine. It's got 3 UAVs, which doesn't make much sense here. And this last one also has 3 UAVs, which again, you don't really need to do. And the special choice should be changed around a little bit. So he's got 2 damage ships that are using Gales, and I want to show you my build, and of course, before I do that, I do want to talk through the rest of the strategy guide here. So the Trench Walker Scattergun, we can ignore, you can outrange. The Chimera or Chimera Scattergun, don't worry about this one too much. There's no way to mitigate the damage. It's going to be forced corrosive damage from this. Depthbringer UAV, both Gales, Sprints, and I assume MDS-3s work against this guy as well. This is guaranteed damage if you don't have countermeasures, but Gales will help prevent up to 100% of the damage. Same for the missile. Gales work against this one and can prevent up to 100% of the damage. You will notice it has King Killer on it, and we're expecting the flagship to have 200 million armor, so this will shoot at the flagship first, and evade would work against this one, but we don't need to worry about that because we can take down everything with our Gales. Of course, we also have some firing arc turrets. Ignore those for now. You can just drive better against those, unless you're autoing, which I'm intending to do a lot of. They don't work against countermeasures, but King Killer does exist. And as a reminder, King Killer will shoot at the ship with the highest armor points, so be aware of that one. The Death Scythe missile right here, we saw Luke driving and avoid the damage, so if you stay moving or hit the backside here, the Pac-Man looking thing, you can avoid the damage from that one as well. And of course there's mines, there's corrosive scattergun ships, and there's the Contagion right here. Gale's work against that guy. There's the shrouded bit, which you saw in the videos from earlier. If you take down the power station, that will unshroud the shrouded bit, so that's the recommended way to drive the targets. Okay, now let's jump into the build. Now, what I mentioned here was this is my build for the regular damage ships, but I do want some countermeasure ships in there as well. It's not going to be the flagship, because there's no reason to. The flagship will have more armor, and will come out too late and be upgrading, so it will not be useful in 2 out of the 6 events I intend to use this in. But the flagship, or the flagship will be built just like this one. One of my regular ships will be a countermeasure setup with all Gales, and I'm going to put Gales on every slot I can. These last 2 are locked to UAVs. I'll put some uncommon or common ones or something on there, so we don't have to worry about it. Same armor setup, of course, no changes to that one. I do want to go through the specials. Now, this ship is basically going to do 0 damage, so just keep that in mind. Everything that does damage, I can remove. So building damage liquid fire warheads right here, I can remove that one. The UAV revitalization bay does damage, doesn't have any effect to range whatsoever, so I can remove this one. The wreath targeting console, again, this is just damage and projectile speed, which is nice, but we can take that off and put on something better. We have the UAV relay, which has penetrative reload. That doesn't really matter right there. UAV damage doesn't matter. Projectile speed is nice, but we can put something else on instead. Okay, now taking a look at the Buckeye UAV targeting, that has penetrative reload. We need to keep that on there because reload is, or penetrative range rather, this is necessary to have these UAVs have the same range, so the ship autos fine. And at this point, we can switch to putting on only things which have a benefit in terms of projectile speed or anti-explosive reload. Note that something that's generic and says countermeasure reload, like subaquatic propellant, does not apply to UAVs because something like that only applies to, if I can actually find subaquatic on blueprints here, if it says it applies to countermeasures, that means it applies to things like sprints and cormorants and does not apply to something like the Gales, although I can't really put that on here anyway, it's blocked by something else. So countermeasure reload does not matter whatsoever, only something that has anti-explosive will have any effect. So Paterios defense system right here has the best stats that I have found for anti-mortars. It has a 75% anti-mortar range, a 50% anti-mortar accuracy, and a 20% anti-mortar reload. So that's going to be your anti-special to put on here, and now we're going to spend the rest of the specials to help increase the projectile speed of the ship. So the best projectile speed special in the game currently is one that's been around for a long time, about all the way back from Tier 8, the Cannoneer, and this is the high velocity rounds that has plus 110% projectile speed. So that's fantastic, we're going to use that. Obviously, building damage, ballistic damage doesn't matter, it's just here for the projectile speed. We can also take a look at more projectile speed specials. So if I actually go into the search bar right here and type in projectile speed, you're going to see that basically nothing comes up. There's high velocity rounds, or we already have it on. Hyper 30 would increase your combat speed, which means the ship would not stack up with everything, which is not what we want. So taking a look at Blueprint, we can see that there is actually something. It's a pipeline UAV circuitry that has a plus 70% projectile speed. So that's nice. The other stats don't matter because, again, these UAVs do like 2 damage without the correct specials to boost them. Now, of course, we can also take a look at some other stuff right here. So you can see that we actually have other projectile speed specials. The other one that I want to use right here is Explosive System 4 that has a 43% projectile speed buff, but apparently I can't use it because it doesn't stack with something else I'm using right now. So I guess I'm not going to bother with that one because, again, it doesn't stack with things I'm already using right here. The last special is actually kind of worthless. There's no great thing I could put in there. There's nothing I can do to boost anti-explosive reload. Nothing else I can really do to boost projectile speed. This ship is not going to get hit any more than any other ship, so using like a super high evade thing doesn't matter, because again, all the damage, if any of the missiles do get through, will go to the flagship first. If you were building this as the flagship, maybe you put evade here, but for me, I'm just going to actually use the Zenith bolstered bow, which is right here. It has 153k survival of both of these and evade, which is just going to help me take less damage when this ship ends up getting hit, but it will be the same combat speed as everything else, so I don't need to worry about that too much. Okay. Now that is the build that I've got going for the Worldeater, which is pretty complicated. It is kind of a little bit risky in terms of Kixeye might decide to wake up on December 30th and make all the anti-explosive Gales that say to shoot at only mortars and UAVs, not shoot at missiles. They might call it a bug and fix it. That would kind of be screwing over the entire player base who have been building their fleets to what we saw in the VXP targets, so I hope they don't do that one here. And I'm not going for a high evade flagship because, again, I'm shooting down every incoming projectile that would hit the flagship first, so therefore I don't need to build a high evade flagship or other ship regardless of anything like that. If you have questions, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. This was a pretty complicated video. It's a very complicated setup. There are going to be other builds that other people have that work almost as well or decently as well. I think that this one is the best one, which is why I'm showing you that here. But I've also shown you the process I used to get there, which should help you make your own choices if you saw the same evidence and come to a different conclusion, or want to build your ship for a little bit of a different setup. There's no wrong build, there's no wrong way to play the game, but I tend to be a min-maxer, and I'm going to pick the optimal one, which I have found is this one. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll also link the videos that I showed here, as well as the fourth one that came out when I've been producing this one, so you can go watch those and see other people in the targets, making your own decisions on that one. With that said, I want to give a huge thank you to the names who appear on the end screen now. They're helping make videos like this one possible. If you want to support the stuff that I'm doing with Battle Pirates videos on the long, in-depth analysis, click on the join button below the YouTube video, and it will help support me. With that said, until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.